So briefly, before we dive into today's Elden Ring discussion, I want to thank everyone who's enjoyed and supported my channel since its inception, because I just recently hit 1,000 subscribers and was accepted into YouTube's partner program. It was really cool to hit that milestone just 11 months after starting my channel. I'm glad to know that the content I'm creating, whether it's Soulsborne related or anything else I do, Doom, Rayman, etc., that it's resonating, that you feel like you're getting something unique from my channel that you're not finding elsewhere. Enough so that you're subscribing and following along, or even going above and beyond to support me on Patreon. That's special. I don't take any of that for granted. But just know, now that I'm a big deal on YouTube, it's only appropriate that I switch up my content strategy. I think these in-depth analysis videos have probably run their course, and moving forward, I'll be exclusively covering Bloodborne 2 and Bloodborne to PC rumors. Now, I don't think anyone else has ever done that, but in the event my videos do get lost in the mix, don't worry. You'll be able to spot them very easily. Just look for the thumbnails with a bunch of red circles and arrows. And I'll be sure to capitalize all of the sell words in my video titles as well. You know, words like rumor, crazy, confirmed. Oh, and I'll incessantly remind you to smash the like and subscribe buttons on my videos too, just in case you didn't know those buttons existed. I just want to make sure I'm helping you out along your YouTube journey. So there you have it, that's my plan for becoming the GOAT of Soulsborne content. Real talk, YouTube's not ready for these videos I got baking in the oven, I'm telling you right now. I'm sure you can barely contain your excitement. I know I can't. But on to the topic du jour. As you surely know, Hidetaka Miyazaki, Yasuhiro Kitao, and the FromSoft team decided to randomly treat us to an Elden Ring gameplay showcase, what ended up being almost 19 minutes of footage demonstrating different elements of the game's combat system, world design, music, lore. It was a lot to take in. And I'm under the impression it was somewhat similar, if not entirely similar, to the footage FromSoft privately showcased to a select group of media outlets and such back in August. But I'm recording this shortly after the showcase, and other than corresponding with a few people on Twitter and Discord, I haven't read any reviews of the showcase. I don't know what the general consensus is. Did the community love it? Did they not love parts of it? I don't know, and I honestly don't care that much either, because I wanted to capture my genuine thoughts the day of the showcase with no external input or priming or anything like that. So if you watched my breakdown of the game's Summer Game Fest trailer back in June, you'll know what to expect here. I'm going to handle this footage very similarly, basically going at a deliberate pace, more or less frame by frame, discussing all the details that caught my eyes and ears, especially the combat details. But because there's almost 20 minutes of footage to examine, and because the footage itself is so dense and there's just so many details to discuss, I'm going to break this discussion into two roughly equal parts, with this first part covering the first 7 minutes of the showcase footage, and part 2, which I'll upload in the next week, will cover the second half of the showcase, which is about 11-ish minutes of footage. So stay tuned for part 2. And for your reference, I'm going off of the gameplay preview uploaded today, November 4th, by the Bandai Namco Europe YouTube channel. And all of my impressions are based on the 4K version of that trailer. So that link is down in the video description if you need it. So without further delay, kick back, get comfortable, and let's just hang out and have fun and discuss Elden Ring's gameplay, starting from the top. So instantly, I'm in awe of the color palette. This gameplay footage is so much brighter and more vibrant than the screenshots and SGF trailer led me to believe. And I love it. Elden Ring obviously features a dark game world with dangerous places and characters, but we've never seen a world this colorful from Miyazaki and the FromSoft team. I sense a lot of influence from Sekiro's Senpo Temple area here. I feel like they took that concept, that vibe, those colors, and just ratcheted the saturation dial up to 11. Again, I love it. It's so nice on the eyes. It also calls to mind for me the Lothric Castle color palette from Dark Souls 3, that fall time atmosphere. I also dig just how much of the screen is filled by the glowing Erd tree. I like the idea of the Erd tree serving as a central landmark of sorts in the lands between, perhaps somewhat like Hyrule Castle was used in the Breath of the Wild map. No matter where you are or what you're doing, if you're above ground, it'll always give you a sense of place and direction. These distant birds on the horizon keep catching my eye as well, and they really stepped up their foliage too. I feel like the FromSoft team was looking at Ghost of Tsushima and some other games and thinking, okay, we can do a little bit of that too. The flowers and bushes are a small touch, sure, but they do go a long way to immersing me in this world I'm seeing. And FromSoft has always had cool skyboxes, but man, this is next level. But despite all of that, we do have this poor soul basically crucified, just lifelessly hanging up there. That's cool environmental storytelling though. I've also seen some people say that Elden Ring looks just like DS3, and I don't agree. I mean, on one hand, it's like, so you're telling me that the creator of Dark Souls, his new game is somewhat reminiscent of Dark Souls. Yeah, that's not surprising. Now, if the creator of Dark Souls made a game that looked like Overwatch, now that would be surprising. But if you know DS3, if you know its weapons and armor sets, if you've spent a lot of time looking at that game, the visual fidelity here, the detail on the tarnished player character's suit of armor is on a whole other level. The cloth physics are excellent. I'm liking the look of that horn on the character's waist too. Do you see what appears to be some white hair poking out of the armor, like the triceps area back of the arm above the elbows? I don't know if that's intentional or if it's just some clipping or something, but it is occurring to me that I don't know that we've ever seen this exact tarnished player character without that helm or without this full set. Think about the difference between soul form and human form in Demon Souls. Think about how hollowed and crazy your player character can become in the Dark Souls trilogy. You can look like an unrecognizable zombie depending on the state of your character. Is there any chance something more is going on under this now iconic armor set? I don't know. I'm not convinced, but I do wonder. So the sites of grace are indeed our bonfires or archstones or sculptors' idols in this game. Man, check out these gorgeous golden particle effects too. And I wonder who is this masked, perhaps female character? I wonder what their story is. We saw them in the SGF trailer as well. You notice they turn their head to acknowledge the tarnished player character as we pass by. That's a nice touch. The narrator says occasionally these sites of grace will manifest guiding light, I assume indicating where the player character could proceed if they wanted to progress the sort of main story of their journey. But I love how non-invasive it is. That's an example of smart open world design. No stupid waypoint chasing here. It makes me think of the beams of light in Shadow of the Colossus, or the use of wind in Ghost of Tsushima. And again, there's Miyazaki solving the big boring sandbox problem, just instant horse. You don't even have to wait after whistling. It's all fluid. You're immediately on the horse, maintaining your forward momentum, leaping around. We see a cow or a lamb, some wildlife here. That's cool. Maybe you can harvest resources from wildlife. I don't know if that guiding light was suggesting the player character should go into that crumbling church or not, but I know I want to go in there and poke around, see what or who is in there. Imagine there being an awesome spell or weapon skill or piece of armor just waiting in there, something you can just randomly and organically discover. What's interesting here is that it's not clear if the caravan guys are aggroing. You hear a little sound at this moment, maybe it's the giants, and it looks like the player character picks up the pace a little, but it would be nice while riding across the lands between if every single thing didn't just aggro and immediately come after you. I mean, sure, you want some degree of that, but I've always thought that was one annoying aspect of many open world games, especially if you go back and look at at Oblivion or Skyrim or something. As you're traversing the map, you're perpetually aggroing mud crabs and random mages and groups of bandits. It's a bit silly, and as much as I love combat in video games, I want smart, interesting, engaging combat. I don't want never-ending random encounters. We do see enemies wearing different coats of arms and carrying different banners and stuff. I wonder if these enemies are loyal to the specific demigod who rules over this segment of the map. I'm also beginning to wonder what's up with the supplies on the back of the mount. Is that just for cosmetic purposes? Can you customize it? Does it represent actual supplies the player character has harvested? I love that classic kill sound effect. It basically sounds unchanged from Dark Souls. I love to see FromSoft innovating and evolving in so many ways, but that's a fun callback. Alright, random Wyvern battle. You thought you were going to fight this mob around the campfire, but nope, here's an angry Wyvern with a big horn on his nose and what appears to be a fuzzy, furry tail. That's interesting. That statue in the distance just caught my eye. I wonder what's over there. Who's being honored with that statue? See, that's successful open world design in my mind. To make the map visually interesting enough that the player is always looking around, wondering, feeling torn. Do I go here? Do I go there? You already can sense that there's real secrets to uncover in this world. This isn't just an empty sandbox. All right, our first look at full-on horseback combat. That staff and those soul arrows or whatever are seeming pretty paltry against this Wyvern. Okay, now we're talking. This summonable bow and arrows are sick. This is what I want magic to look like in Elden Ring. Being able to strategically pepper something cool like that into battle, yeah, you want to dodge that. Ooh, yes, there it is, the new Sekiro-inspired guard mechanic that we've seen on display a couple times now, but whose existence Kitao did officially confirm to PC Gamer in August. He said that in Elden Ring we can actually block certain attacks with our melee weapons at the expense of stamina, not HP, and then we also have the ability to dish damage right back to our enemy as we come out of that guard position. That's what Kitao said is called guard countering. I cannot wait to experiment with that. That could seriously be a transformative mechanic in this game. Ooh, nice dodge. And then is that a charged R2? Right into the death blow. In the eye, just like Sekiro's Great Serpent. It's interesting how the inside of the Wyvern's eye is like gold and emitting embers or some kind of particles. I wonder if that's unique to this Wyvern or if that's how death blows look and work for a lot of enemies in Elden Ring. Ooh, a little foliage popping. No big deal. Now, I love that they're just leaning into some goofiness here. Very reminiscent of Sigurd from DS3. And that the pot boy, well, at least this pot boy is friendly. He's not a hostile enemy. Alexander. But I feel like the real point of this scene here is to show us that there's dynamic weather in the game. Looks like a storm has blown in, visibility has dropped, the trees are rustling. Oh, and the club. They definitely just wanted to show off this big meaty club, and I love it. Great cape too. Some classic clipping of the scabbard through the cape there, but who cares? I definitely want that cape.
Alexander tells us he's also known as the Iron Fist. That's interesting. Makes me wonder if we can summon him at any point, see if he lives up to the nickname. This makes me really hope that there's a pot covenant too, because if there is, I'm joining.
Man, that's gorgeous. See what I mean about the colors? In real time, in this footage, you just see how saturated everything is. Deep blues and purples even, with those great specks of glowing gold. This is a very attractive overlook. It does make you wonder how significant that big castle is. I'm sure at least one nasty boss is waiting for us in there. Looks potentially difficult to access too. I'm also very intrigued by that chapel or whatever that structure is atop the cliffs to the left. This outfit rolls too, that curved blade. This looks like a Dex build to me. Yeah, check out the detail on that armor. Oh man, a map, a full-fledged FromSoft world map. Sekiro had a map of sorts as well, but it was less functional and more artistic, more just cool to look at. But this is real. This is crazy, a world map in a Miyazaki game, and it looks so good. Again, a Shadow of the Colossus reference, but this game map is giving me major Colossus vibes. But it's unique too. It's just beautifully rendered. Look at the trees, the cliffs. Look at these two guys out on a boat in the water. There's even a barrel floating way out there. You know, I've barely given any thought to water in this game world. Oh my god, imagine if we could canoe our way out into the sea and continue our journey out there. Imagine a water boss. I'm just drifting into fantasy land here, but you never know. Water is clearly part of this game map. That's my takeaway here. This map looks big too, and we're only seeing parts of it. The narrator said we populate the map by collecting map fragments, so I wonder if you can explore almost anywhere, but you might not have a good sense of where you are or where you've been without the appropriate fragments. And we clearly see here that we can zoom, look at a legend, a Sites of Grace list. We can place beacons, and look at this beautiful clock in the bottom right corner indicating that right now it's early day in the game world. I adore these little markers. Those are so cool. That goofy skull. It's just wild to see elements like this in a Miyazaki game. I just can't get over that. Ooh, look at this place way out in the water. That's making me hopeful for at least one location with some heavy Hyde's Tower of Flame vibes. In terms of art direction, that's one of my very favorite locations in all of Soulsborne, but I feel like it was underutilized. It should have been 3 times as long as it was. The enemy placement and variety could have been a lot better, but that base concept for the area was so cool. I'd love to see in-game locations like that again. Yep, the beacons appeared to be very much like those in Breath of the Wild, and some other games as well, just giving us a column of light. So the launch pads are called Spirit Springs, according to the narrator. They're cool to see in context like this. The narrator uses the term stress-free traversal again, and we've heard Miyazaki and Kitao both use similar language as well when talking about the game world. And I really like that. Like, no tedium, no stupid conventions. They've clearly designed this world to be fun and inviting. The pace of traversal is great based on what we're seeing here. Everything looks fast and snappy and responsive. Okay, more wildlife, a ram perhaps. I wonder if these are natural lightning strikes. Looks like some bloodstains, or the Elden Ring equivalent of bloodstains perhaps. Some birds, maybe eagles or something, just chilling on a perch, reacting to the player character. And as quickly as we were on our mount, we're off and assessing a sprawling enemy camp below. Pulling out a monocular, it looks like, to survey the enemy placement. The narrator said that the caravans, similar to those we've seen out on the roadways, contains treasure. Perhaps these convoys are out on the move during the day and at night they settle at a camp? It's interesting to imagine how FromSoft's style of combat would play out in a big open camp like this. We're usually in much more confined spaces. On one hand, you can imagine all the options you may have and how you could strategically decimate this camp. You can also imagine being overwhelmed and overrun and having enemies coming at you from all different angles. Oh man, there's our menu, our first look at it. What's catching my eye is the sidebar on the right. Character status. So this character is level 23, 1198 runes held. I'm guessing runes are our souls or blood echoes in this game. Vigor, that's going to govern HP. Mind, perhaps that's Elden Ring's version of attunement, although I do see memory slots at the bottom of the list. Maybe those two things go together. Endurance, that's stamina. Interesting to know that the endurance stat is back in Elden Ring because we know that stamina only engages when you're in battle, somewhat similar to how Sekiro's posture meter worked. Strength and dexterity, pretty self-explanatory. Same with intelligence and faith. But arcane, that's interesting. No luck at the bottom of the list, arcane instead. Now in Bloodborne, arcane affected item discovery, your effectiveness with hunter tools, the damage you inflicted with fire and bolt weapons and items. Of course, some weapons like the Holy Moonlight Sword and the Cause Parasite, those were very contingent on arcane, they scaled with arcane. Man, I wonder what the scope of this attribute will be in Elden Ring. Quickly, I want to address the fact that poise is listed here. That's going to be exciting for some players and triggering to others. Let's talk about poise for a moment. So an August 27th article by PC Gamer clarified that based on comments from Kitao himself, traditional parrying as we know it is featured in Elden Ring, as well as the ability to break an enemy's poise or stance by wearing them down with repeated attacks. So that article, as well as others by Polygon and Eurogamer, said that breaking an enemy's stance doesn't necessarily result in an instant death blow like it does in Sekiro, but does lead to a devastating critical attack. Now, I know going back to the Souls games, some people like the poise system, others despise it, but I do think that Sekiro had a savvier solution by giving each enemy, including the player character, separate meters for HP and posture, and it sounds like what's on offer in Elden Ring is a little more inspired by this, by Sekiro's posture system. So the menu is currently sorted to all items, so we see maybe a homeward bone, a firebomb, some throwing knives, and the player character here is using some resources to craft arrows. About crafting, when I first heard Miyazaki say that Elden Ring had a basic crafting system, I was a little mixed. But the more I think about it, the more I considered Kitao's remarks about how we'll be able to regain HP by dispatching small groups of enemies around the world, the more I think the FromSoft team realized that some of our outings in Elden Ring versus a game like Demon's Souls or Bloodborne would be long and kind of random or arbitrary in nature. It's not like we're always going to be 2 alleyways away from a lantern, or in this case, a site of grace. So I suspect that more than anything, they wanted to empower players to keep at it, to explore and dungeon dive to their heart's content with no real limits. And that becomes more sustainable if we can craft items and such. So I'm certain Miyazaki is not trying to conform to open world trends here, because crafting has become an almost needless cliche in open world games. Just something developers often force you to do because, well, it's an open world game, you have to craft stuff. But here, knowing how FromSoft combat works, how complex their enemy and boss AI can be, how high the overall difficulty can be relative to most mainstream games, crafting does make sense to me. And I'm not bothered by it at all. It might be cool, it might be fun. I'm assuming you might even be able to go hunting, harvest some of the wildlife we've seen, and use their bones or hides or something to craft items that you'll actually need and want to use during your playthrough. I will say, compared to that beautiful game map, I do think the inventory UI here is a little basic. It looks very readable and intuitive, but yeah, a little basic. I hope FromSoft adds a few more embellishments to this menu, but that's nitpicky, it's not a huge deal. So we're sneaking in and using a sleep bone arrow to take down this first guard. They're obviously showing people that if you choose, you can play the game pretty stealthily. That's definitely not my style. I feel like I'd be running into this camp, jumping around, dodging, slashing, unleashing my weapon skills, maybe firing a couple of those cool magic arrows we saw earlier during the Wyvern battle. Although that backstab is sick, having specific animations for grounded enemies like this is so cool and makes so much sense. Instead of just clumsily chunking away at their hitbox while they lie on the ground, Miyazaki says, nope, just give them a backstab and put an end to it. I can't overstate how skilled FromSoft's animators are. In my opinion, nobody creates sick combat animations quite like FromSoft does. You can hear the music picking up too. I think I've seen some complaints about that as well, that Elden Ring should be silent at all times other than boss battles, and I don't know, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think given this game's design, given its open world, that silence wouldn't make as much sense as it does when you're slinking through the alleyways of Central Yharnam or something. I found the combat music to be a bit repetitive and annoying in Sekiro, but some of the more ambient music, in my opinion, fits that game and its art direction very well. And I've enjoyed these touches of ambient music throughout this footage. I have literally zero worries knowing that Yuka Kitamura is behind the game's soundtrack. She's gonna kill it. That's why this game's so exciting. It's not just something I'm going to play for a while and then put back on the shelf. I'm sure, just like the other 6 games from Demon's Souls to Sekiro, that Elden Ring is going to be a full-on experience that I'm going to be engaging with for years to come. We're not just getting some game here, we're getting new art direction, new locations, we're getting a new pantheon of bosses, we're getting new weapons and armor sets, we're getting a new soundtrack, new boss themes, new menu music, new hub area music, whatever. Yes, these games are anchored by their combat. That's ultimately why they're so great and why I've poured hours and hours, year after year, into them. But you can't overstate the fact that we're also probably getting at least 2 hours of new music by Yuka Kitamura. That alone is worth the price of admission in my mind. Now I like this. The music is picking up. This incredible curved sword is out. This player character is done with the sleepy arrows and sneaking around. It's time to spill some blood. The jump attack, and a critical strike. The narrator mentions here too that enemy stances can be broken with jump attacks, for example, so that's what we saw. The jump attack broke the stance, leaving the enemy open to that critical takedown. Oh, there's a weapon skill, and it's beautiful. Very reminiscent of the Storm Curved Swords Tornado skill from DS3. Okay, now this gameplay showcase is getting really good. This is what I'm here for. So that's a unique running attack animation. The enemy blocks it with his shield, so the player character does a heavy or charged whirlwind strike, breaks the enemy's stance, backsteps, just styling on him a bit, and dashes forward, disappearing in the process, Karthus Milkring style, and drops him while he's vulnerable. Now, was that one fluid attack? Was that a weapon skill? Was a ring involved? It's hard to say exactly, but I'm liking what I'm seeing, and there's the goodies. Now for a little demonstration of summonable spirits. And you know, some players will make a point to never rely on these. Some players will acquire and use them for fun to experiment with. And other players will heavily rely on them to help in battle. It's clearly one way in which Miyazaki is giving players options versus giving them difficulty sliders or something like that, which clearly do not mesh with his artistic vision, and I very much respect that. And Twin Blades are back. That's so cool. DS2 fans will be very happy to see these in action. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are or which of these games you prefer more or less. Twin Blades are pretty and arguably cool. Like, who doesn't want to go full on Darth Maul on some Dreglings? Oh, and a little dual wielding. Minus the sleepy arrow stuff, I'm digging this character build. So that feels like a good place to stop for part 1. That was a lot to pick apart, but I had a good time doing it and sharing my thoughts with you. And now it's your turn. Head down to the comments and let me know of this portion of the showcase, of the first 6 to 7 minutes of footage. What piqued your interest? What was most exciting to you? Did you love every single thing you saw? Was there something you didn't love so much? Was there anything I discussed here that you hadn't previously considered? And remember that you can also connect with me on Twitter, on Instagram, on my Discord server, Terrapop's Treehouse, and on Patreon, which is not only a great platform for further supporting what I do, but also a gateway to accessing much more content from me every single month, like my patron-only newsletter, my patron-only podcast, behind-the-scenes posts, and early video previews. So thank you as always for watching, take care, and I'll catch you on part 2.